The ancient Egyptians are known for many things, one of the most fascinating being their practice of mummification. This process of preserving the dead has captured the imaginations of people for centuries, as it seems so mysterious and otherworldly. But what is the secret of mummification, and how did the Egyptians do it? In this video, we'll explore the history of mummification and the science behind this ancient practice. The origins of mummification go back to ancient times. In the earliest days of Egypt, the dead were simply buried in the desert sand, where the hot, dry climate naturally preserved their bodies. However, as the civilization grew more complex, so too did the burial practices. By around 2600 BCE, the Egyptians had developed the art of mummification, which allowed them to preserve the bodies of their loved ones in a much more sophisticated way. So, how did they do it? The mummification process was complex and involved several steps. The first step was to remove all the internal organs, which were believed to be unnecessary in the afterlife. The brain was also removed by inserting a long hook through the nostrils and pulling it out piece by piece. Once the organs were removed, the body was washed and covered in natron, a type of salt that helped to dry out the flesh. The drying process could take up to 40 days, during which time the body was turned regularly to ensure that it dried out evenly. After this, the body was wrapped in linen bandages, which were often coated in resin to help hold them in place. These bandages were arranged in a specific pattern, with each layer covering a specific part of the body. Finally, the mummy was placed in a coffin and buried with all the necessary items and provisions for the afterlife. But why did the Egyptians go to all this trouble to preserve their dead? The answer lies in their beliefs about the afterlife. The Egyptians believed that the soul continued to exist after death, but that it needed a physical body to inhabit in the afterlife. By preserving the body through mummification, they believed that the soul would have a permanent home in the afterlife and would be able to continue living there forever. Of course, not everyone could afford the expensive process of mummification. Only the wealthy and powerful were able to have their bodies preserved in this way. The rest of the population had to make do with simple burials, although they still took great care to ensure that their loved ones were buried with all the necessary provisions for the afterlife. Despite its ancient origins, the practice of mummification has fascinated people for centuries. Today, scientists continue to study the mummies that have been discovered in order to learn more about life in ancient Egypt. Using the latest technology, they are able to analyze the remains in ways that were never possible before, shedding light on this ancient practice. One of the most interesting discoveries made in recent years is that the Egyptians were able to use sophisticated surgical techniques to remove the organs from the body. This involved making a small incision in the side of the body, through which the organs could be removed without damaging the rest of the body. This was an impressive feat of surgical skill, especially considering that it was performed over 4,000 years ago. Another area of research has focused on the materials used in the mummification process. The linen bandages, for example, were made from flax fibers that were soaked in water before being spun into thread. By analyzing the chemical composition of these fibers, scientists have been able to learn more about the types of plants that were grown in ancient Egyptian society. The Egyptians were incredibly advanced in their understanding of anatomy and chemistry, as well as in their beliefs about the afterlife. It is remarkable that they were able to develop such a sophisticated process of preserving the dead, and that this process continued to be used for thousands of years. But mummification was not without its drawbacks. For one thing, the process was incredibly expensive, which meant that only a privileged few were able to have it done. Additionally, some mummies have been found to have suffered from health problems in life, which were likely exacerbated by the mummification process. Finally, the practice of mummification declined with the rise of Christianity, which rejected the idea of preserving the body in favor of focusing on the soul. Despite these drawbacks, the legacy of mummification lives on. Today, we continue to be fascinated by the mummies of ancient Egypt, which offer a glimpse into a world that existed thousands of years ago. We can only imagine the incredible skill and dedication that went into creating these preserved bodies, and we can appreciate the lasting impact that this practice has had on our understanding of history and science. The study of mummies has also had practical applications in modern times. For example, researchers have been able to use techniques developed for studying mummies to better understand the progression of diseases like cancer and heart disease. By analyzing the remains of ancient Egyptians, scientists have been able to learn about the health problems that were prevalent in that society and how they may have been linked to factors like diet and environment. In addition, the study of mummies has also helped to shed light on the lives of ordinary people in ancient Egypt. While most of the mummies that have been discovered belong to the wealthy and powerful, there are also some that belong to common people. By studying these remains, researchers have been able to learn about the lives of people who may have been forgotten by history. Perhaps, most importantly, the study of mummies has helped us to better understand the ways in which ancient cultures approached death and the afterlife. The Egyptians believed in a complex system of gods and goddesses, and they believed that their actions in life would determine their fate in the afterlife. By preserving their bodies through mummification, they were ensuring that they would be able to continue living in the afterlife, and that their souls would be protected from harm. Today, we may not share the same beliefs as the ancient Egyptians, but the study of mummies remains an important and fascinating field of research. By continuing to analyze these preserved bodies, we can learn more about the lives and beliefs of our ancestors, and we can gain a better understanding of the human experience across different cultures and time periods. The process of mummification has captured the imaginations of people for centuries, and it continues to do so today. There is something awe-inspiring and mysterious about the idea of a preserved body with all its secrets and stories locked inside. The study of mummies allows us to peel back the layers of time and uncover the details of a civilization that existed thousands of years ago. But it's not just the mummies themselves that are interesting, it's also the cultural context in which they were created. The Egyptians had a complex system of beliefs and practices around death and the afterlife, and mummification was just one aspect of this. For example, they believed that the heart was the seat of the soul, and that it would be weighed against a feather in the afterlife to determine the person's fate. They also believed in a complex system of gods and goddesses who played a role in every aspect of life and death. All of these beliefs were woven into the practice of mummification, creating a rich tapestry of cultural significance that extends far beyond the physical preservation of the body. It's the combination of science and culture that makes mummies so fascinating to study, and it's what draws researchers and enthusiasts from around the world to explore this ancient practice. Of course, there are also ethical considerations when it comes to the study of mummies. For one thing, it's important to remember that these were once living, breathing people who had families and communities that loved and cared for them. It's important to treat their remains with respect and dignity, and to avoid sensationalizing their deaths for the sake of entertainment. Additionally, there is the question of repatriation, that is, the return of cultural artifacts and remains to their countries of origin. Many mummies were taken from Egypt and other parts of the world without the consent of the people or governments involved, and there is a growing movement to return these remains to their rightful owners. This is an important conversation to have, and it's something that needs to be approached with sensitivity and respect for all parties involved. Overall, the secret of mummification is a fascinating one, revealing much about the beliefs and practices of ancient Egyptian culture. In conclusion, the secret of mummification is a complex and fascinating one, revealing much about the beliefs and practices of ancient Egypt. Through the process of mummification, the Egyptians were able to preserve the bodies of their loved ones and ensure that their souls would be protected in the afterlife. Today, we continue to study these preserved bodies in order to better understand the lives and beliefs of our ancestors and to gain insights into the human experience across different cultures and time periods. Mummification is a testament to the ingenuity and skill of the ancient Egyptians, and it remains one of the most enduring and fascinating legacies of their civilization.